We see a lot of people asking questions about their own locations.
Yeah.
And that's really hometown bias. If you're an investor and you're looking for a property, you usually feel safer by buying something that you can either drive past every day, or it's in your local area that you feel confident and secure, as opposed to buying interstate. So if you live in New South Wales, you might want to buy something in Queensland, Victoria, that sort of thing. When I bought all my properties, I lived in Sydney, and I bought a number of properties in Queensland. So that was not having a hometown bias in one sense, but I was very familiar with the Queensland market, which essentially, in other words, says I was biased towards the market that I was most familiar with.
Fair enough. Well, I've actually got my own story of hometown bias, because when I bought my very first property, I was 24 years old, went into the market and kind of just like hoped for the best.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting my information from the right sources either. I can't blame anyone for this, but most people, when they buy their first property, they tend to just buy where they're most familiar with.
Yeah.
Typically where they grew up or where they're currently living, and they just buy down the street or in the same suburb or something like that. And that's kind of what I did. I ended up losing $50,000 off that purchase.
All right.
Right, over the course of 3 years, and I ended up selling that property. And when I think back onto it now, the reason why I ended up buying it was because I didn't know any better. I came from the western suburbs of Sydney. I knew nothing about the east. I knew nothing about the north. I knew nothing about anywhere else. I knew nothing about any interstate market, right? So I just basically bought within my narrow field of knowledge.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about hometown bias, I'm not saying that wherever you live is a crap place to buy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you owe it to yourself to expand your field of knowledge, to be all-encompassing as much as possible. So when you go and make that decision, your decision is not a biased decision. I met someone about 4 weeks ago, and this guy lives in Melbourne. Been living there for the past 10 years. The guy has 5 investment properties. All 5 properties are all house land packages.
You're joking.
All in Werribee, in Victoria.
Wow.
Every single one.
Wow.
Every single one. And when I did the numbers for him, I discovered that the properties were costing him $2,000 a month in cash flow alone. He also bought 2 or 3 of his properties in the peak of the cycle.
Right.
Unfortunately, some of those properties are worth less than what they paid for it now.
Yeah.
And so it was a very tough situation to get out of. And so that's a typical example of somebody not doing their research, not expanding their field of knowledge, because he didn't even have to buy interstate. All he had to do was just understand other areas of Melbourne. You have to start by expanding your field of knowledge.
Yeah.
Then when you make a decision, it then becomes an informed decision. It's not just based on your own bias of what you already know.
Yeah.
I own a property in Melbourne. My Melbourne property was hit by the lockdown. Fortunately, I own 1 property in Melbourne. All of my other properties are scattered across different states. But the pandemic didn't actually hit my portfolio that hard because it only affected 1 property, essentially. But for that person, that gentleman, it affected all 5 of his properties.
That's crazy.
Rental income dropped on all 5. Capital growth went down on all 5 properties, only 1 single hit. It increases your risk exponentially, and most people don't realize that.
As passive investors, you must diversify.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not diversifying and you're passive, you're not active, which means you can't buy and sell these properties quickly to avoid these sorts of situations.
That's exactly right. And it's a big part of what we do. It takes a long time to kind of like expand your field of knowledge, right? So it doesn't happen overnight. It took me a decade of investing to understand the nuances between all the different markets. And so even now, we wouldn't say like we understand everything. We're still students. But what I would say is that we're probably 70, 80% there, whereas most people are sitting on 5 or 10%. You know, that's why people tend to work with us, because we have that knowledge that we can just give you the important bits of information so that you can make those informed choices.
Practical information as well, you know?
That's right.
Not too theoretical, just giving you the basics and giving you the knowledge to really get that portfolio started. That's the biggest issue.
Exactly.
They're taking the first step.